Thank you very much. So let me introduce myself. I'm Laurette Guillenvar, which is quite obvious because I'm the only she in there. I'm working at Renault. I'm in charge of the strategy of innovation for AD and ADAS. And I'm also part of the ADScene team, which is a project that has a long history that you will learn today. Maybe a short answer to your first question would be that we are indeed one of the initiatives that are proposing to gather scenario in databases. And of course, we know each other, we work all together, and one of the ways we are trying to make sure that data are shared is to work in funded project with the European Commission. So Sunrise is an ongoing one, and future project will be also launched very soon, we hope. So we are trying also to include, of course, OEMs in those consortium, but also academics, of course, and all type of stakeholders of our context. So we will start this presentation today with Vincent from Systemix, and I leave you the floor.
So just good afternoon, I'm Vincent René from Systemix, and R&D manager and the leader of the thematic transport and the autonomous and connected transport systems at Systemix. So a short agenda, we will have ADScene Genesis and some context, industrialization, IT challenges, tools demonstration, and platform development roadmap. So I would like to give you a short presentation of the genesis of ADScene. Actually, ADScene is in an industrialization of Mozart Scenario Manager. Mozart Scenario Manager is a platform, is a tool of, is a part of Mozart, and Mozart is a platform that we are developing at Systemix through our research project. And as you can see, there is 3 parts in Mozart. There is Scenario Manager, there is the test case generator, and the virtual testing. And ADScene is the industrialization of Mozart Scenario Manager and the database. Mozart Scenario Manager started with the project SVA in 2015. This is a French research project. In this project started some definition and concept on the scenario management tool and how scenario should be contained and managed and capitalized in such a tool. And other project next, 3SA, and then also ASV and SAM and Prisma delivered also some inputs to this project. And all those projects, French project mainly, but ASV is a French and Singapore project. So delivers a lot of inputs, research and developments to Mozart Scenario Manager. The design, development and scenario collection went further mostly with 3SA after SVA. And of course, we went further with a lot of points like referentials for behaviors, for actors, infrastructure elements, management of urban infrastructure, multi-user management, plug-in system, scenario generation, a link to the simulation, and of course data collection. And for example, we had the possibility to import a lot of move scenarios. If you know Move, this is a project of Renault, Vedecom, Valeo, and Stellantis. There is some cars that are driving in France and Europe, and they drove millions of kilometers. So we'll speak about it a bit later. And so this kind of data helped us to design the import of such data, to how to manage the capitalization of those data, and so on. So what is Mozart Scenario Manager? This is a scenario library for the conception, the validation, and the homologation of the autonomous and connected vehicle, with scenario data coming from different sources, so expertise material, expertise scenarios, real-world data, as I spoke about MOVE project, accidentology studies, experimentations, and so on and so on. The scenario description comes from Pegasus, which is already in the ISO 34501, but actually Mozart is following the taxonomy from the beginning, the taxonomy of the ecosystem from the beginning, and it follows the evolutions of this taxonomy. So we are always following the ISO and all the, not already ISO, but concepts that are coming and coming. In Mozart, as I explained, there is four sources that have been identified as pertinent, relevant, scenario sources. So I spoke about the driving data coming from MOVE, but also the accidentology. I don't know if the cursor is, yeah. But also the accidentology and incidents data. Those three kind of data helped us to design and to define the overall process to import the data, to manage them, to capitalize them, and after also to use them. And of course, there is another source of scenario. This is the expertise. And expertise scenarios are coming from the experts, mostly in the research project. Like well-known cut-in scenarios, cut-out scenarios, and so on. And all those sources and development and tools are coming from our research project, mainly French project, and is now, and Renault and Stellantis decided together to industrialize this scenario manager and the management of the database, to industrialize it to ADScene. And now I let the place to Alexandre. He will present you ADScene. Please.
Thanks, Vincent, for the introduction. So I'm Alexandre Doumbia. I'm from Capgemini, and I'm the data and solution architect for ADScene. I will present you some of the topics and challenges that we have addressed during this industrialization phase. So the first one is about platform security. So one of the challenges was to make some landing zone accessible for all our partners to drop some driving data into our platform, which is a cloud platform, publicly accessible, restrict access to all the internal driving data so that only the internal services and data processes can have access to it, without making it public, isolate environment for processing, and especially for private campaign or research projects, restrict the access to our network of partners. So currently the platform is public with some restrictions on the partner. So there is a registration process to be allowed to access to the platform. And on top of all that, global security, firewalls, cloud defender tools to tackle common security threats. There is a second aspect, which is the scalability and performance. So from the beginning of the platform, we pushed in the design some serverless component, every kind of technical component that can allow us to scale on demand or be flexible. So use auto-scaling for main application, for instance, for the user application, whenever the user base is growing. And for the database aspect, we opt for cloud databases with the ability to scale out, and scale up, so that we can adapt to the ramp-up of the data, scenario data, with minimal downtime or no downtime. There is also the cloud integration, because industrialization means a lot of integration, so we have more than like 15 applications, services that are communicating together. So there are workflows in place, event-driven patterns, and some scheduling for data processing that are in place. So this has been a real challenge also. and also to set up this data integration to receive the driving data from the partner in a common data format and trigger some data processing from the moment that they arrive on the platform. Those are not the only challenges. In the second slide, I mentioned some of the examples on data, API security, data quality, and data versioning traceability. So currently, we have a semi-automated version of the scenario generation. So when the user drops some test drives campaigns into ADScene, so we are notified, we do some technical checks on the data that we receive, but we decide whenever we need to process and to detect all the scenarios that happen in this driving campaign. We are currently planning on full automation so that when the user drops the data, a few minutes later on, you directly have access to the scenarios extracted from this data. We expose data services through APIs, so not only the web application that we provide, that will be demonstrated during the demo, not only that application access to our services, but also enterprise application can be integrated. So the OEMs, the research partner can integrate the activity and develop on this. So we can call it like this software as a service kind of approach that we are currently addressing also. We manage fine-grained access at the dataset level. So we group the scenarios that are in the database. We label them like part of a data set so we can manage the access, perimeter, private, public, and gather them and make the search of the scenarios easier. On the data quality aspect, so we focused on one main topic that we have implemented, which is the concrete scenario quality checkers. During the demo, you have more information about the scenario hierarchy and so on. But the idea is when we detect some real-life scenario based on driving data, how do they fit to the logical description of it? How are the parameters contained in those logical ranges that we expect from a logical scenario? We defined driving data quality gates. Now we are planning to integrate those checks whenever we receive the driving data in order to give alerts on data quality. And this is a useful feature that we are focusing because it helps us have a database quality overview and identify how the driving data quality can impact the scenario quality, as it is an industrialized platform, so we are talking about massive data, so small data quality issue can bring to larger issues. And the last topic that I'm presenting today is data versioning and traceability. So currently, we are keeping the history and modifications of the different scenarios that are part of ADScene. So it's a crucial feature for validation of ADAS AD features. But now we are planning to improve this level to provide more depth into the traceability and versioning, have the full life cycle of the scenario accessible so that we can be aligned with the business requirements, but also for audit purposes. Those are the topics that I wanted to present you today. For the next parts, it will be demo-oriented, so I will let Laurette and Stan introduce it.
Thank you, Alexandre. So I think you are going to launch just in a few minutes, the database. So we will present you two different parts of ADScene. The first one is the scenario manager, which I will present, and then Stanislas will present the scenario browser. So I guess you can switch. We experimented some Wi-Fi challenges, so we hope everything is going to work.
Yes, I think the Wi-Fi will be with us for this demo.
Let's cross fingers. So the scenario manager, which I will present first, c'est bon? Is the tool that we use to create scenarios, to manage them, to view them, display them, and also to use to use cases and test protocols, which I will describe in my demonstration. So let's see if it works. Ah, non, c'est pas là. So this is how you access to ADScene. So I will now go into the scenario manager. So in there, on this first page, you have an overview of what's inside the database. So you have all those containers. Each of them is gathering scenarios from different data sources. So you can see we have accident scenarios, but we also have normal driving scenarios, which is not so obvious in there, but we know it's in there for now. It's really something we developed together with Stellantis and is going to be open to new partners soon, but for now it's still on an ongoing development that is nearly at its end. So on this page, you have a summary of what's inside the database. So today we have 400,000 scenarios, mainly from normal driving, of course, because concrete scenarios are extracted automatically from normal driving. And here you have a description of all those collections that we are using in ADScene, and it gives you an overview of what type of equipment we went through and what type of infrastructure that we have in the database. So it's something very practical to have a quick overview of it. So let's dive into accident container. So same principle, you have an overview of what's inside this container. In this one, you can see the different type of accident that we have in this container. And also we have, I will explain it shortly later, a quality validation process for our scenarios. So you can see how many were validated finally in green, and then in blue you have the draft one, which still needs expert review, and so they are on the process to be implemented. So this is the type of accident scenarios we have. Okay. What's interesting is that we describe scenarios either from accident database or from driving database the same way using our data model. So for example, in those accidents with bicycles, you have this level of functional scenario, and this is the logical scenario, and then finally the concrete scenario. That's what Vincent explained at the beginning. And so I will just show an example of a concrete scenario in there. So it's just a bit, it takes some time to arrive. So a concrete scenario always has a pictogram to describe it, and then a description which allows the user to know approximately what happened. So for this one, it was an accident between a bicycle and a truck. And we have a way of describing accident situation. This one was due to the right-of-way violation by an incoming vehicle. So those are the attributes of this scenario. We know what was the driving context, and also we have this traceability feature which allows to track the database it was extracted from. So this one was Voiture, which is an accident database, a French accident database. And there you have a description of the injuries in the accident. This is a description of the infrastructure, so this was a roundabout. And then each actor is also defined, and you have some details for each one of them. And now we get to the heart of ADScene, which is this cutting of the global scenario into different scenes. So each one has a description. So this is when the situation starts, and then each time something happens, let's say, you change the scene, and you describe each steps of it the same way. And then for each step and each actor, you have those parameters For accident scenarios, the parameters are extracted from reports from police, actually. So it's something that is not really detailed. You don't have the very precise information about speed, but of course, when we extract scenario from driving data, it's different. So there you can see that we describe the lateral position of this truck, and then the longitudinal position, the speed, and the angle. And then below that, you have the description of the context, so the weather, the road state, the traffic sign, etc. So this was the first example of a concrete scenario. And now let me take you to another container. So we will go now to the container that gathers scenario extracted from driving data. So same principle, you have the description of what's in there, what type of scenario you have, and the numbers of it. So I don't know if you remember, but you have, of course, a lot more concrete scenario of driving than accident, hopefully. So this is organized the same way. You have the functional scenarios, the logical scenarios, and the concrete scenarios for each one of them. And this is the tricky part of it. So Alexandre forbade me to do anything in that case. Okay, let's just wait. So, for example, here you have all scenarios linked to the vehicle in front decelerates, and then you have all different type of scenario in there, logical scenarios. And then for this kind of scenarios, you have different logical scenarios, and this is how a logical scenario is described. So same data model, a description of it, and description of attributes, infrastructure too, and then actors. And now we come to maybe what would be more interesting for this conference attendees, the simulation part. So when we describe each actor in there, we also annotated which parameters should be used for simulation. So these are the blue bubbles there. And we also identified which parameter is a trigger to change scene, to go from one scene to another one. Those are the yellow parameters. So for the rest, it's typically the same kind of thing that are annotated than the one that I showed in the accident scenario. So the next thing we wanted to show was the container that we gather for the regulation and Euro NCAP scenarios. Alors, let me try something. Ben non, je sais pas. OK. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? So that's really the Wi-Fi problem. It's ça fera pas. Ça fera pareil si j'essaye de remonter depuis là, ce sera pas plus rapide. So we have a container gathering all scenarios that are used for regulation or Euro NCAP in this container you can see here. And this is what it looks like. So you have in there a description of, okay, so this is the container and these are the scenarios that are used for regulation and Euro NCAP protocols. So this was done together with UTAC, which is the French company for homologation. And we try, this is what is really useful for car manufacturers as us, to know all scenarios that should be validated when we develop an ADAS. So for example, in there you have those car-to-car rear situation, which includes different type of situation, and each one is described in a same logical scenario. What is interesting in there is that we start to see that we somehow need to know which ADAS could be used with that scenario or which ADAS would be validated with that scenario. And this is what we annotated in green in here. We can expect an AEB to break in that situation. The right way to do this job of linking an ADAS and a scenario is to use the use cases. So this is the feature that we developed. And so in all those use cases, which are linked to regulatory or Euro NCAP tests, we defined what should be the expected behavior of the systems we have. So for this same scenario that we just saw, we have here a description of the expected behavior in each of those features, for each of those ADAS. We should wait for a forward collision warning to be activated or an AB to be activated. And then when you want to test that, you can use what we call the test protocols. So how does it work? For each of the Euro NCAP or regulatory systems, we have a list of mandatory tests. So for example, in that situation, AEB should be tested with those 3 kind of tests. Forward collision warning only, where you define for each of those parameters the ranges of the test and the values that should be tested. And this is suitable either for virtual simulation or physical tests. And then you have that for all the tests of this list. So this is very convenient to know exactly what is mandatory, what is regulatory, and what can lead to a good evaluation at Euro NCAP. I will end my presentation with a short focus on those reference data that we defined. So the aim of this database is to be able to share scenario together and even with other stakeholders, as I said in the beginning. And in order to do that, each scenario, whoever does the coding, each scenario should be described the same way and use the same variable, the same parameters. So that's why we had to define those reference data. For example, when you have in a scenario when you have a pedestrian or an animal, everyone should use the same way to describe it and the same values for it. So this is the aim of those references. It was done also together between Renault, Stellantis, and also all our partners, and also with the French authorities, I would say. And that's what we intend to implement in the different projects we are part of, for example, Sunrise, and future ones. And it also takes into account what is developed at ISO about those scenario database. So I think I'm done. Stan, I leave you the floor.
Okay, I'm Stanislas Di Piazza from Stellantis. I am part of technology office and I am a project manager in the field of autonomy and ADAS advanced research. And for sure, I am part of ADScene project for Stellantis part. So if we come back to the ADScene homepage, there is a feature, Scenario Browse, that allow us to find scenario and show statistics related to this scenario. So if we deep dive in Scenario Browse, we have a first screen that allow us to select criteria and then filter scenario related to this criteria. We have 8 main criteria. For example, road type, we can select scenario by road type, geographical type, we can select scenario, we can search only Euro NCAP or regulation scenario. We can select scenario by type of ego. For example, we can select only car or truck or shuttle ego vehicle involved in the scenario. And we'll also can search scenario by type. We can only select accident or standard driving scenario. As already mentioned, all our standard driving scenarios are coming from real-world observation. Thanks to MOVE project led by VDCOM Institute, French Institute, we already collected 1 million kilometers of raw data in motorway in Western Europe, and we applied algorithm to extract concrete scenario from this raw data. And all these concrete scenario will be gathered in the database. At the end of the day, we expect to have around 2 million of concrete scenarios. Currently, we have nearly 4,000 scenarios in the database. And for sure, in our roadmap, we target to extend this ODD and collect scenarios coming from urban or peri-urban ODD, for example. We also have around nearly 20 sub-criteria possible. We can choose radius of coverture, slope. We can, for example, select scenario with only 3 lanes involved. We can select legal speed limit. We can, for example, choose scenario with an ego vehicle higher than 80 kph. We have filter related to the actor. We can choose different typology of actor involved in the scenario. We can also, for example, select a behavior. For example, I want a scenario with a lane change. We have criteria related to traffic condition and to weather condition. And we can also directly type in this zone a name of a scenario. For the example, let's launch a search with these 4 criteria. I want only standard driving scenario with a max of 3 lanes, with an ego speed higher than 80 kph, and evolving lane change. So if I launch a search, I have this result. So as already mentioned, all the concrete scenarios collected are sorted into different typology of logical and functional scenario. So in this case, we have found 18 functional scenario, 120 logical scenario, and nearly 27,000 concrete scenario satisfying these 4 criteria. If I choose one functional scenario, we can see that, for example, 20 logical scenarios are in the right part of the screen, are attached to this functional scenario cut in front. And we have here a first category of statistical we can provide. For each logical, we can provide the number of concrete scenarios attached to this logical. In this case, 1,700. And we can also provide the occurrence rate. So in this case, we have 62 cut-in from left simple per 1,000 kilometers. If we change one parameter, for example, I want now having all the ego speed value range possible. And if I launch another search, we have now updated for sure the statistic. We have now, for example, 130 occurrence per 1,000 kilometers. If I click on this icon, we can have a simulable model. We can see if a simulable model is associated with this logical scenario. For all our standard driving type, all the logical scenarios are associated with a simulable model using the parameter describing the scenario, and for the moment this simulable model can be used into Scanner Studio and CarMaker tools. So if I click here, I will download a zip file ready to import in CarMaker or in Standard Studio, in Scanner or in CarMaker. If I enter in a logical scenario, so you retrieve the description of logical scenario. As explained, the logical scenario gave us the value coming from all the concrete scenario we collected in real life. So we can provide, if I click here, different statistic charts to provide statistics regarding the distribution of a given parameter describing a scenario at each scene. So I can show you a first example of a stat chart, histogram, that display numerical scenario parameter, value statistic distribution. For example, I choose the parameter position of cutter. I am in the scenario cutting from left simple. So I can choose the parameter position of the cutter at the moment it enters in the ego lane. And I display now the statistic distribution of the distance between the cutter and the ego vehicle when the cutter enters the ego lane. So we provide the number of count, the min max value, mean median. We can change the binding, the width of the abscissa range value. If I click here, I can plot the envelope curve of the histogram in a form of normal law. So we can see the coverage related to 1 sigma, 2 sigma, and so on, and so on. We can also refine the statistics with additional parameters. For example, I want to have the scenario only under the rain. So I select the parameter rain. And now we updated the statistics with this additional parameter. We have now only 400 counts and a new statistic distribution. Another example of chart we can provide, a scatter plot chart that display the relation between two scenario parameters. For example, I want to see the relation between the speed of ego vehicle and the speed of the cutter. At the same keyframe when cutter enter in ego lane. Okay, and we provide here this multi-parameter chart. For example, we can see that in this case, when speed of ego is 55, speed of cutter can vary from 25 to 80 kph. Another example of chart we can display is a box plot chart that display the statistic distribution at each scene. If I choose again the parameter distance between the cutter and the ego vehicle, yes, we have the distribution of this distance histogram at each scene of the scenario, initial scene, final scene, when cutter start overlap, and when cutter enter ego path. On the left part of the screen, So this box plot chart, the line represents mean value, max value. The blue zone, beginning of blue zone, first quartile. End of blue zone, third quartile. We have a mean, max, and median. This kind of chart can be useful to search specific case. For example, the example is maybe not relevant. But for example, I want to see all the concrete scenario observed when the position of the cutter is between 100 and 150. And we can display here all the concrete scenario related to this range of value. And I can, for example, open one concrete scenario. So we can here, yes, this one, for example. I am interested in this one concrete scenario. And I can open it, and we will display the description of this concrete scenario, really observed in real life. And for example, the distance of the cutter at each scene, we can see here the distance of the cutter at each scene of the scenario. I think I have now ended my demo. Okay, and just a last slide, which is a platform overview.
Yes, thank you, Stan. So now you know approximately everything about ADScene. So we included in that database lots of data from different kind of database, real-world driving data from the MOVE project in France, accident data from different accident database, and it's starting to be worldwide this year. We also have those expertise or regulation Euro NCAP scenarios that are based on our skills as car manufacturers. And we, as I said previously, we have this data quality assessment process, which consists in proposing draft scenarios and then reviewing it all together with different skills in our teams to make sure that the scenario is relevant first, and then is in line with the way scenarios should be coded in ADScene. So this ensures really the quality of our data, and this is what we are looking for as industrials. Alexandre showed you how we had a very hard time creating a secured environment in which we can develop our systems and validate it. It's now easy to interface. And we gave you an overview of the features and tools, which are still also ongoing, and that's what will be shown in the roadmap.
Hello everyone, I'm Aaron Revers from IRT Systemics. I'm a software platform architect, and so I'm involved in the development of the Mozart platform, but also in the ADScene project. So I will give you some insight into the monitoring and contribution activities conducted at Systemics within the standardization and regulation field. So standardization activities are particularly active in the recent years. Our goal is to track any standard evolutions to adapt our solution to new requirements. We are closely looking at ISO 34500 series, which focus on topics in the scope of ADScene. We are working on ISO, especially 34501 and 34502 to ensure that our concepts are kept at the state of the art and that our solution is based on a taxonomy that is shared by the community. For instance, it led to the planification of the integration of abstract scenario level, which is yet absent from our concept right now. For the future, we are deeply tracking evolution of our non-incubing standard, so ISO 34504 and 34505, on the test scenario for automatic driving systems and also scenario evaluation and test case generation. We are also working on the export of assets in the open scenario format in order to provide interoperability with other tools. We have already some proof of concepts of export in open scenario 1.1 of concrete scenario, but we are actively looking at open scenario 2 for exporting other assets. And to finish, our experts partners participate in working groups at the French administration level. You can see some example here. This allows us to be involved in standardization on regulatory activities and to anticipate incoming evolutions. I now let Stanislas going further with the roadmap with new feature integration in ADScene.
So to conclude our presentation, this is our last slide. In line with standard incomings, we present here the scientific and technological logs we want to handle in our research and development roadmap. Some of them will generate new features to be developed and industrialized, developed with Systemix and is industrialized with Capgemini. I am thinking, for example, of how to manage route safety analysis for L4 automation. Route safety analysis which divides the route into sections and define nominal interaction scenario on these sections. So how we want to create a feature to manage this route safety analysis, how to structure operational design domain, specification, how to structure object event detection and response specifications. We will also develop feature to evaluate test plan coverage and also to optimize test plan and improve test case coverage. And the last feature, maybe there will be other features, but in this slide, the last feature that we want to handle is how to export open scenario compliant assets. So thank you for your attention. I think we have time now for a Q&A session.
Yes, question?
Yes, one question. Will the database be open for other companies?
Short question.
Good question. We hope so. Very soon. We are now creating links with other OEMs, for example. And because we are part of those EC-funded projects, we are working on interoperability. Even if everything is not open, we really want to be able to share data. So we are now working on it together with Stellantis, and we will soon propose some way of joining the initiative. But it's an ongoing process, which is sometimes a challenge, I would say.
Other question? What about my question from the beginning? So how do you plan to open to other initiatives, other databases that already exist? Do you have any answer on that?
Yeah, I kind of answered at the starting. So we are the way we are doing it now is to be part of a funded project, reopen project, being part of ISO discussions also, and we are really together with Safety Pool, with Streetwise, with other initiatives, trying to reach interoperability at least, and maybe share. And Sakura also, we initiated some discussions with them, and Pegasus, of course. The aim is to be able to share best practices, data, of course, and maybe cost in the near future. Let's hope. Let's wish. So this is the way we are trying to do it now.
Okay. Questions? No more questions? So I will give the floor to Andras.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to thank the whole team for this very exciting demonstration. And I see the questions from Continental on to how to access the databases, because the databases and the scenario seem to be accessible very easily and with all of the parameters. So it's very exciting. And as you know, that the Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, sorry, we had all of these, the special session on AD and ADS up to certification and homologation, and there were lots of discussion between the existing consortium and projects, and that was a discussion and debate about the collaboration, the real collaboration between the various actors and players, OEMs and suppliers in Germany and in Europe. So you have, or you are bringing some new data about that, including through the Sunrise project, where lots of partners are already existing and you're discussing. So we hope we'll be able to, for the next year, where we will continue this special session on ADScene certification, and maybe you'll be a part of that, and we'll be able to work together. So thank you again. It's the end of this workshop. Thank you very much, and